Today's movie starts with a man telling his son the history of their people. Long ago, a meteor containing vibranium crash landed in Africa, in the region of the sources of the Nile River, and it affected the plants there. Many years later, in the age of humans, 5 tribes began to fight over the vibranium until one of the shaman spoke to the panther Bast and ingested an herb that gave him the power to become the first Black Panther. The man united the tribes to create the nation of Wakanda, leading him to become the king. However, the Jabari tribe chose to take refuge in the mountains, distancing themselves from the other tribes. The Wakandans used the vibranium to develop a highly advanced technology and chose to isolate themselves from the rest of the world by producing a force field that hides the nation from sight. The scene changed to Oakland, California, 1992, where Njobu and James are planning to move a large shipment of weapons across the city. At this moment a knock is heard at the door, then James opens it to find 2 warriors. Njobu recognizes them and reveals himself as a citizen of Wakanda. King T'Chaka, who is also Njobu's brother, was using his vanishing suit and entered the room with the 2 warriors. T'Chaka orders Njobu to go back home because he couldn't finish his mission, which was killing the thief Ulysses Claw who stole the vibranium, but Njobu refuses since he has other plans. T'Chaka then reveals that James' real name is Zuri, and he is also a spy sent from Wakanda. They discover that Njobu has stolen the vibranium for himself, so they decide to bring him back home to put him on trial for his crimes. Outside in the courtyard, a group of children looks up to the sky and see T'Chaka's ship flying away. In the present day, T'Challa is set to become the king after T'Chaka's death, which was in Captain America: Civil War. He is flying over Nigeria with Okoye, a Dora Milaje general. The plan is to extract his ex-girlfriend Nakia, as she is undercover hostage with mercenaries smuggling women and young men as soldiers. As the Black Panther, T'Challa jumps out of the jet and uses Wakandan technology to disable the mercenaries' vans. As the goons step out to confront T'Challa, he fights them all before finding Nakia. Then she joins T'Challa and Okoye as they return home. The 3 return to Wakanda and reunite with T'Challa's mother Ramonda and his younger sister Shuri, who was making the preparation for T'Challa's ceremony to become the new king. All of the tribes gather by a waterfall to witness that. In the beginning, Zuri gives T'Challa a drink that removes the power of the Black Panther. Then he asks if anyone from the other tribe wants to challenge him for the king title, but nobody from the other tribe chooses to challenge T'Challa until the Jabari tribe shows up, and their leader M'Baku steps up to try and take the throne from T'Challa. The fight starts with M'Baku almost succeeding to win until T'Challa takes back the upper hand and puts M'Baku in a hold over the falls until he taps out and surrenders, allowing T'Challa to rightfully claim the throne. After the ceremony, T'Challa is given another drink to restore his powers before being buried in the sand so that he may be taken into the ancestral plane. There, T'Challa sees his father. The 2 embraces, then T'Challa breaks down upon seeing his father. T'Challa expresses his concerns over becoming the king and doing the right thing. T'Chaka tells his son that he is a good man and it is hard for a good man to be king. In London, Eric Killmonger Stevens is at a museum admiring artifacts from African cultures. He asks the guide about a hammer which looked like a weapon, which she identifies as a weapon made in Chad, but Killmonger corrects her and says it is made of the vibranium from Wakanda. The guide then passes out from something Killmonger slipped into her coffee in order to create a diversion. A medical team arrives, which reveals to be Chloe and his goons. They kill the guards, and Killmonger steals the weapon before getting away with his crew in the ambulance. Meanwhile, T'Challa walks through downtown Wakanda with Nakia. He asks her to stay home to help him run things around there, but she shows hesitance in continuing to work in Wakanda. Later on that day, T'Challa is with his best friend W'Kabi as they check on a wild rhino in a pen. They are then called to the palace by Okoye, who is also W'Kabi's lover. She reveals that Chloe is going to sell the vibranium piece which he stole earlier to an American buyer in South Korea that night, and they must stop him. W'Kabi wants to join T'Challa in finding Chloe because he is responsible for the death of his parents, but T'Challa asks him to stay in Wakanda and keep the borders secure while he goes to bring Chloe here. Before the mission, T'Challa meets with his sister Shuri who has developed a number of impressive technology, including sound-absorbent shoes which she calls sneakers, as well as modifications to the Black Panther suit. It is disguised as a necklace, and it absorbs each hit it takes and turns it into kinetic energy. Shuri also made a funny video of the king taking back his own kick from the suit. After that, T'Challa, Nakia, and Okoye go undercover in Busan to a casino, where they try to find Claude and his buyer. T'Challa runs into Everett Ross, who is also an undercover agent. Claude and his goons show up, and he quickly realizes he is being set up. Okoye is compromised by one of Claude's men, forcing her to fight them. Claude and his men escape and ride through the streets, leading Nakia and Okoye to pursue them. T'Challa follows in his suit, while Shuri rides a car through a projection back home that operates an actual car that T'Challa rides on. The villains shoot at him, but the hits from the bullets give him the kinetic energy that he redirects to the villains. Claude blasts at Nakia and Okoye, destroying their car, but not killing them. T'Challa reaches Claude's car and rips out a tire, causing him to crash. T'Challa goes to finish Claude, but Nakia reminds him that people are watching. Then they take Claude into custody. The next day, Ross interrogates Claude, while T'Challa and Okoye listen in through a device T'Challa planted on Ross. Claude reveals to Ross what he previously didn't know about Wakanda and all that it contains. Outside, Killmonger and his crew set up explosives behind a wall. Nakia sees this on security cameras and runs to warn everyone, but the villains blow open the wall. They start shooting, and Ross pushes Nakia out of the way, taking a bullet in the back. Killmonger takes Claude away, and T'Challa notices a ring around Killmonger's neck similar to the one he got from his grandfather. Ross is given something to keep him stabilized until they return home. The villains head to a plane that Killmonger wants to take to Wakanda. Claude takes Killmonger's girlfriend as a hostage since he has other plans, but Killmonger kills the woman himself before shooting Claude. He tells Killmonger they won't let him into Wakanda until he reveals a tattoo on his lip that most Wakandans have. He then shoots Claude dead. Back in Wakanda, W'Kabi expresses disappointment with T'Challa for failing to bring in Claude. At the same time, Ross is being tended to by Shuri, who uses the vibranium to heal his wounds. T'Challa then goes to find Zuri and asks him why Killmonger had his grandfather's ring. Zuri is then forced to admit what he knew about N'Jobu. In a flashback to 1992, we see that N'Jobu had stolen the vibranium to spread it to other people of African descent so that they may fight back against their oppressors. N'Jobu turned his gun on Zuri, and T'Chaka stepped in and killed N'Jobu with his claws. It filled T'Chaka with great regret, and they left his son Eric behind. The boy was in the courtyard when this happened, and he later found his father's body. Eric would go on to become a Black Ops soldier who earned the nickname Killmonger due to his high body count, which is evident by the marks on his body for everyone he's ever killed. Meanwhile, Killmonger enters Wakanda with Claude's corpse. He presents it to W'Kabi, who escorts Killmonger to the palace. Killmonger reveals his true name, which is N'Jadaka, and that he is the son of N'Jobu. W'Kabi confirms it to everyone when he shows them Killmonger's ring. Killmonger announces his intention to claim the throne and challenges T'Challa, who accepts to fight him. Everyone gathers for the challenge by the falls once again. Then a bloody battle followed where Killmonger fights brutally and almost easily overpowers T'Challa and managed to wound him several times, but before giving him a death blow, Zuri steps in to save T'Challa. Then he reveals to Killmonger that he is the responsible for what happened to him. Killmonger fatally impales Zuri and killed him. Then he takes T'Challa down before throwing him over the falls. Then Killmonger is made king. After that, Nakia takes T'Challa's sister and the queen then escapes. While Killmonger goes into the ancestral plane, he is back in his old apartment, where he sees the moment that he found his father's book. He comes across N'Jobu's old journals and even speaks to the man himself briefly. After waking up, Killmonger orders everyone to burn a garden of heart-shaped herbs for future kings, but Nakia manages to sneak one away with her before she escapes again. The new king then organized a meeting with the leaders of the other tribes, where he revealed that he is planning to send Wakanda weapons for the other Africans to help them stand against the real killer, and then Wakanda should rule the world. Okoye didn't like this idea, But W'Kabi supported Killmonger, and they start the preparation for that. After that, Nakia goes with Ramonda, Shuri, and Ross to the mountains to find the Jabari tribe. They speak to M'Baku and ask for his help. He reveals to the group that they fished T'Challa out of the river and that he is now in a coma. Ramonda grounds the herb into a drink to give T'Challa before they bury him in the snow that he rests upon. He goes into the ancestral plane and sees T'Chaka again, this time condemning his actions in leaving Killmonger behind. T'Chaka admits that this was the truth he hid from his son, and he expresses his regret. T'Challa then wakes up. He requests M'Baku's help in fighting Killmonger, but he refuses. On the other side, Killmonger now has help from W'Kabi and other Wakandan soldiers, as he plans to send their weapons across the world to other operatives and mercenaries as his father had planned. As one of their jets flies overhead, it is shot down by T'Challa, making his return as the Black Panther. W'Kabi and his army charge against T'Challa, but he blasts them away with his kinetic energy. Okoye then leads the Dora Milaje into battle. Shuri gives Ross access to a jet to take down the others before they leave Wakanda. While Ross was destroying the other plans, one of them attacked the lab, and Shuri tells Ross to escape, but he decides to stay and manages to shoot them all down before the lab shield drop down. Meanwhile, Nakia joins Shuri and Okoye as they fight Killmonger in his new suit. W'Kabi unleashes armored rhinos into the battle and starts taking control of the battlefield. Suddenly, the Jabari arrive to help the Dora Milaje before W'Kabi can kill them all. During the battle, one of the rhinos nearly runs down M'Baku until Okoye steps in. Then she forces W'Kabi and his soldiers to surrender. Before Killmonger can hurt Shuri, T'Challa tackles him, and they fall down into the vibranium mines. They continue their fight until T'Challa utilizes the tech down there to mess with Killmonger's suit, leaving him exposed so that T'Challa may impale him with his own short spear. Now vulnerable and dying, Killmonger expresses his regret over not seeing how beautiful Wakanda really is. T'Challa carries Killmonger out of the mine to see the sunset, which N'Jobu had described to him as a sight to behold. T'Challa offers Killmonger a chance to be healed, but he declines, knowing he would only be imprisoned afterward. Killmonger requests to be buried at sea with his ancestors, as they knew death was better than bondage. He pulls the spear out of his chest and dies peacefully. Things become calm once again in Wakanda as T'Challa reclaims his throne. He once again asks Nakia to stay in Wakanda, as he has plans for her to help him. T'Challa brings Shuri to Oakland outside Killmonger's old apartment. T'Challa reveals he bought the building, as well as 2 buildings next to it, so that he may establish a Wakandan outreach program that Nakia and Shuri will spearhead. He then brings down their jet so that the kids in the courtyard may see and be in awe of it. One of the boys then approaches T'Challa and asks him who he is. After that, T'Challa is joined by Nakia, Shuri, and Okoye at the United Nations. He announces his plan to bring Wakanda out of hiding in the hope that they may work together with the rest of the world. In the last scene of the movie, 3 Wakandan children are looking at someone in a hut. Shuri orders them to not bother the person. He steps out of the hut, and we see it is Bucky Barnes.